later on in the podcast. But rather than making this a part 2, I want to make this almost a continuation from the last podcast.
Okay.
So if you remember at the end of the podcast last time, I gave you a Quran.
Yeah.
Now this is very interesting because at the time you wasn't Muslim then.
Yeah, that's right.
And now, alhamdulillah, you are.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say, welcome to Islam.
Thank you.
And secondly, what I want to say is, I know you've said a few times that you don't want to discuss Islam too much on podcasts.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that because at the end of the day, it's nothing to be ashamed of because we're all sinners and nothing can get anyone anything perfectly said. And even me being a born Muslim, and I'd like to say I have a vast amount of knowledge on Islam, regardless of what I say, there's still going to be people out there who comment back on what I say because people have different schools of thought, etc. So what I will say is just like the quiz shows where you got phone a friend, also the team are Muslim right now, so you've got phone a sheikh. So if you've got any answers, any questions that you want answered on this podcast today from a fellow Muslim right here,
thank you.
Or if I can't get the answer, we'll get the answer for you.
Yeah, I'm studying it and I have a huge amount of respect for Islam, and it's one of the only subjects that I am passionate about that I don't know everything about. Everything else I'm interested in, I can sit and talk about for hours.
Yeah.
Or if I talk about Islam, I feel like there's people far more qualified than me, and I feel like it's disrespectful because I'm new to it. I'm a revert, and I'm trying to learn like everybody else. And yes, I'm famous, and yes, I'm well known, but my opinion isn't valid compared to someone who's a born Muslim or studied it harder than I have. So,
everyone's opinions are valid.
Of course, but I don't consider myself qualified.
Yeah, fair enough. But how would you say it's shaped your life and your mentality?
You know the best thing about Islam? The best thing about Islam is how simple it is because there's wrong and right.
It's a simple religion.
It's wrong and right. I mean, you look at other religions and it's also subjective now.
Yeah.
And that's why I've said many times on different podcasts that it's the last true religion. If you don't have a strong barrier, if you don't have a yes and a no, you don't have a religion. If you tolerate everything, you stand for nothing. And if you believe in God and you say, I believe in God, but I'm not a Muslim, I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. You're a Christian. What is Christianity anymore? What does it mean? You can go to a Christian country, and America, let's take, for example, and you'll get in more trouble for insulting George Floyd than you will for insulting Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for sure.
You can walk down walk down the street with a T-shirt saying Jesus is gay. Girls barely go to church. If they do, who knows what they were doing the night before? None of it means anything. And then if you go and find a Christian that says this trans person has changed gender, what do you think about that? Christians are so soft, they're going to go, well, I hope he finds redeem, and I hope he finds guidance. Haram, bro. Haram. No, you didn't. It's haram. And I like that it's yes and no. And what's the point in a religion if you're too afraid to say what you believe in, or afraid to stick up for it, or afraid to defend it? Then what's the point in any of it? So I feel like it's the last true religion. I feel like it's the last religion on the planet. And it's kind of interesting because since my reversion, I've had lots of conversations with the right-wing conservatives who were upset by my reversion as if I cared. And a lot of them said to me, oh yeah, but it's a Christian country. We need to restore Christianity to England or wherever. And they don't seem to understand that the basic law of the universe is that power vacuums get filled. This is the basic law of the universe. If a tiger arrives in a brand new habitat and there's no other predators, it's going to destroy and eat all the rabbits, and it's going to take over.
Facts.
Anyone who's in the West who's concerned about the spread of Islam should be more worried about the absolute fall of Christianity. The reason people revert to Islam is because they're looking for God, and they can't find God anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's Christianity's fault for being so weak and decadent.
Yeah, we were discussing this as well as a group earlier on, and we were like, the UK majority of it is a Muslim, population. So it's gone past the point where it's now deemed as a Christian country because there's more Muslims than Christians in the first place.
This is the Islamic Republic of Great Britistan, and the thing about it, but the thing about it is, it's not even about numbers. It's about strength of belief. If you wake up and you want to truly live a religious life, and you want to feel like you have religious conviction, and you want to feel the fraternity of a religious life, and you want to have the boundaries and constraints of a religious life, you're going to be attracted to Islam. You're not going to be attracted to Christianity because you can wake up and say, I'm a Christian, and nothing changes.
Yeah.
Nothing changes and nobody cares. And that is Christians' fault. So I've had a lot of people complain at me as if, like I said, as if my personal choices are something I should... I mean, it's kind of, I'm self-analyzing as I talk here. I find it very, very interesting that Christians look at Islam as a threat as opposed to just understanding that it is a massive power vacuum because Christianity feels godless, and you do not feel God in Christianity anymore. And that's the reason that people are so attracted to Islam. That's the reason I was attracted to it, because I respect it. How can you believe in something you don't respect? I don't know, and that's a general question for anything. You have to respect it. You have to look at the creeds and say, okay, I respect that. I respect how they defend their religion. I respect how they're black and white on certain issues. I respect all of these things. Also, it's kind of interesting because if you want to measure the success of a religion, you can measure it in regards to how many people follow it, or like you just said in the UK, or how fast it's growing. But I think the number one measure of success for a religion is how well it preserves the sanctity of a society. I think that if you want to say, is this a successful religion? Well, then you'd look at the society which it governs and say, are the creeds of the religion being adhered to by the society that it governs? I would argue that most Islamic countries have an Islamic feel. I would argue you'd avoid a lot of the LGBT garbage. You'll avoid a lot of the woke insanity. You'll avoid a lot of the feminism, which has destroyed the West, and all these things, because Islam is being adhered to and it's keeping the society functioning. Do I go to Christian countries and feel like Christianity is preserving them? Not really.
What about true hardcore following Christians? I'll give you an example. Obviously, you're just coming off the back of doing a podcast with George Janko.
Yep.
Now, I love that podcast purely because you guys was talking about religion, you being a Muslim, and he seems like, I haven't met him obviously, but a true following Christian.
Yep.
And it's funny because when I see a true following Christian, it's like you're so close to Islam, but you're just a couple of places where you're going wrong.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, shout out to George, because one day, you never know, man could be Muslim himself.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Christians must feel a deep resentment towards Muslims, especially the true believers, because we stick up for what we believe in, and they want to, but they can't because their own religion has become so woke and almost betrayed them. How can you stand up and say, I'm a Christian and I mean it, and you better, when they have gay preachers? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And your fellow Christians will turn on you and call you a bigot. Your fellow Christians will call you a bigot and call you hateful for saying that a man shouldn't chop his dick off. And then you're going to sit there and say I'm a true Christian.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
So all the Christians I speak to who truly believe, and I've spoken to a lot of them, they are very envious of Islam. And then I'm like, well, then what's the delay? But they feel like an affinity to Christianity because they were raised with Christianity or they're born Christian, and perhaps they see Islam as a Middle Eastern religion, which is kind of interesting because Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion.
Yeah.
They're from the same place.
Yeah, they all spiral they stem from the same country as the Middle East.
I read somewhere that only 18% of Muslims are even Arab. I think the largest, there's obviously a huge black proportion, and Indonesia is a massively Islamic country. Malaysia.
I think Islam just crossed over 3.5 billion Muslims globally. Wow. That's more than half the population of the world.
If you believe in God, I don't see how you cannot be a Muslim. I just don't see the attraction to any other religion that makes any kind of sense. And you can also look at this, and this is why I'm careful to discuss this subject, because I don't want to get in trouble with people who know more than me, but you can also look at this from the ideological and the theologian standpoint in regards to what happens after we die, and superpowers and Allah and Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all these things that we don't quite understand. But you can also discuss it right here on earth with what you see, like I said about preserving the sanctity of a society. So you sit and say, okay, well, if you're Christian, how is Christianity saving your children from the oncoming enslavement? How is your Christianity saving your children from the slave mind programming? How is Christianity protecting you? How is Christianity helping your neighbors? How is Christianity preserving anything? Whereas Islam, it's kind of interesting because someone else said this who was smarter than I, and I can't remember where I heard it from, but they said whenever you see a post-apocalyptic Christian society in a movie, it's just the purge and everyone's out to kill each other. When the meteors hit or whatever and America's under attack, there's snipers on the roof and everyone's trying to get food and everyone's struggling. Whereas if you look at a post-apocalyptic Islamic society, which exists right now, they're on the earth right now, they function and people still love each other. And it's the belief in God that keeps them together. I mean, there's no legal system in Gaza that's stopping people from committing crime. It's God, and it's God alone. And then you sit and say, okay, well, the strength of that religion, even in the harshest possible conditions, can preserve, to a degree, the sanctity of society and human nature. I don't think a Christian country could do that. If you put a Christian country under the level of destruction Gaza's currently going through, I don't think people would sit and say, well, Jesus says I shouldn't steal. In fact, if you look at what happens during natural disasters in America, it's the absolute opposite. It's just looting and chaos. What is a Christian country anymore? I don't know. What is a Christian country? A guy in America recently just got charged for a hate crime for taking down a statue of the devil that they had erected in a church. I'm mind blown. Like,
statue of a devil in a church.
They put a statue of the devil in a church.
That one makes sense.
He walked in there and ripped it down, and he's being charged with a hate crime. So I feel like if I want to get conspiratorial, which of course is unlike me, but if I want to, I feel like
I'm all for it. So bring it.
Well, God is the final barrier. The final barrier to the slave programming is always going to be God, because there's a firm right and there's a firm wrong. They're going to come along and convince us all that the sky is green. And it's unfortunate because slowly they're going to win. Right now, we laugh at the fact that a man can chop his dick off and become a girl. We laugh at that. But our great-grandchildren won't laugh at that idea. Unfortunately, slowly they're creeping in. And the only barrier to this insanity, the final protection, is God, the book that says yes and no. Simple.
So would you say, just a quick, sorry to disturb you there, would you say the answer to getting out of that and being part of the group where we don't believe what they say?
It's only Islam. This is the point, because Christianity is under such heavy attack now, and they've watered it down and diluted it so deliberately. They've done that. They want to do it to Islam. They're going to try very hard, but it's not going to be easy. It's still going to be a lot harder. Yeah. Whereas Christianity doesn't protect anything anymore. There's no firm right and there's no firm wrong. Exactly. Yeah. So that's why Christianity is under deliberate attack, because they don't want people to be religious. Because when you're religious, you're going to have a firm right and a firm wrong. Mm-hmm. The primary goal of the Matrix, and the primary goal is for them to get you in a position where you'll accept the slave programming regardless of what your own eyes tell you. That's their primary goal. Their primary goal is for you to walk through life with a mask on, full of vaccine, seeing everyone around you fully functioning and healthy and scared of a pandemic. Or walking through life and meeting a nice gentleman and calling him a man. That's what they want. They want you to ignore your eyes. So, and it's unfortunate, they've already got a huge percentage of the populace there who will walk outside and see the sky is blue, watch the news and being told it's pink, and look at it and go, oh, I must have made a mistake.
Yeah,
it's
it must
pink.
have made a mistake, yeah.
So that's their primary goal, and religion prevents that. So they've come along and they've deliberately assaulted God, and they've assaulted the Christian faith, and it was a test for the Christian people to stand up and resist, and they failed. So when they complain now about Islam conquering Western nations, I say, well, you failed. You failed. It's now a power vacuum. Power vacuums get filled, and anybody with a true heart and true conviction who truly wants to respect God is going to be attracted to the Islamic faith, because you have failed. I don't want, bro, if you're going to go to war, which I just described, because war is nothing other than controlling of ideas. That's all war is. The reason we send tanks to some random field and blow things apart is to gain influence over a geographical area, so we can control, to control the ideas of that area. So I just described a war to you. It's a spiritual war, but it is a genuine war. If I'm going to go to war against Satanists who are going to try and poison my children and enslave me, who do I want on my team? Think about it. You're about to go into a bar fight. You want to roll with the G's, or you want to roll with a bunch of pussies? It's a war. And if every time I say to Christians, bro, look what they're doing to Christianity, and their answer is, I pray for them. Bro, no. Haram.
It's interesting. It's interesting because speaking about it now, everything you just said there is pretty much written in the Quran, that there's going to be a war coming against the Muslims versus the rest, in the sense of, well, they're going to try and take everyone away from Islam and try and do that. But obviously the true Islams are going to stay there. Now, it's interesting because with recent technologies, what I've heard in Islam is that the way they try to do it is they want to combine technology with human to create the same power as God. Yeah. Right? Now, I look at things like, this might be a conspiracy once again, but the new Apple Vision Pro that's just come out. Yeah. I look at that and thinking, so you basically want everyone to wear headsets out and about around the whole world and just live, that's fully living in the Matrix.
In the Matrix, bro, yeah. It's scary. And like I said, we will laugh at that. But as technology progresses and our children's children, you're right. People are going to be living completely in a digital world with little glasses on. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I've seen the Apple Vision Pro. I've seen some of the things it can do. I refuse to put it on because I have balls, so I can't. But once they reduce it to, let's say, the size of my sunglasses.
Yeah, then it's going to be scary.
It's going to be crazy. Yeah. Right? So, and that's where technology is going. It's heading in one direction. And that's actually the most interesting thing, because empires rise and fall. And we can discuss the falling of the Western Hemisphere at length. But usually geopolitically, as empires rise and fall, another empire comes and fills the vacuum, as we talked about power vacuums. And I feel like this is the first time in human history where, as the Western Empire falls, which it is, it's going to be replaced with this global technological enslavement program.
Yeah.
There's going to be some server somewhere in Angola where no one knows where it is, and it's going to control everything and everybody. And it's not just a matter of geopolitical influence waning and politicians falling and things like used to happen before. It's actually a lot more scary. And the globalism is coming, and it can't be avoided. And I guess it's kind of like gunpowder technology like this. You can't avoid its progression. It's going to be used. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. How do you try and prepare yourself for that and counter it? It's super interesting. And we need God more than ever, that's for sure.